Ahanang FM podcast e go tlisetsa puisano ka botshelo jwa ga Dr Nkagisang. A re mo itse botoka le go utlwa tsa botshelo jwa gagwe. Kgolo
Ke ngwana wa Moikageng, born and bred here.
dithuto
In the 15 years that I was studying for my first 8 qualifications, I was sleeping an average of 3 hours a night.
polotiki
They are not there because they want to be in politics. I don't want to be a mayor. I don't want to be a councillor. I don't want to be this or that. But I love Porsche.
bodumedi
Ha ile gore ha ba tloga kerekeng, o tla dula ko ntle, o tla remela rona re boe ko kerekeng.
Dr na re a gona le sengwe se o sa se itseng.
What is an influencer?
Se fetwe ke Ahanang FM podcast episode 1 re bua le Dr Oupa Nkagisang. Etela Ahanang TV kwa YouTube le Ahanang FM Facebook page ka labone 31st of July 2025 ka ura borobedi. Reza ithute tsa malebela.
Nna ke batho ba le ba reng tsatsi le ke sule. Ha ba gore monno lo sule, ba gore monno le o ile go ikhutsa bose.
Welcome to Ahanang FM podcast. My name is Makale Marumo. I'm your host for today. And Renali, our staff for today. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to invite you in our studios. Renali, Dr Oupa Nkagisang. Oka dumedisa balebedi ba rona kwa gae.
Thank you for hosting me, and I'm told that I'm the first guest. I'm very privileged, and thanks for having me, and good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you so much, Doctor. The reason why we're doing this with you is because Basha mo community nya rona aba go itse, but re batla gore Basha ba nne close to you, ba go itse gore go tlang go go fitlhele dilo tse di fitlheletseng, and ra itse gore at some point in your life you had challenges and all of that. So how ka re tsa fela through gore o godile yang? How was it? How no gola o goletse go kae? Batsadi ba gago go how was life back then?
Look, I thanks for this opportunity to speak about my life. Ke goletse mo Porsche, ke ngwana wa Moikageng, born and bred here. Ke golela ko Thabeng, ke ngwana ko Thabeng. And growing up, I grew up in a family of 9 kids. In fact, technically we grew up really 8 because the one Otlang in the middle passed on before the other 4 were born because and then from there on, we were 8, 4 brothers and 4 sisters together. We grew up in a very humble background, humble beginnings. I grew up in a 4-roomed house, and throughout, like you know, in a black society, we have many challenges that we come across. But I think it's just the drive here, or you want to be better, and you want to better yourself, and you want to make sure how life you know in a bit set. So I went through difficulties in terms of how I grew up, and a lot of people do not know when I was doing not to give my age, I can 3. It was actually quite funny because there in those years I was struggling with my health. I grew up being a very weak child, and funny enough, I don't know when was the last time I went to the doctor. So I grew up like that, but I grew up in those circumstances. And of the family that I have, only first born Akwachai, second born Akwachai, my 2 other sisters have matric, excluding the matric. So I grew up in those, that type of an environment. But I then took a decision. I actually want to do better. And I want to make sure at least there's somebody in the family who can go further than the rest. And I think through their blessings and through their help, I was able to study further. And in the process, I acquired 9 qualifications.
Oh. Before we come to 9 qualifications, what I want to know better or more about you, difficulties you understand because
Yeah. Yes.
So you know what was happening.
So funny enough, I always say to everything and Rona, we grew up with my mother being a housewife and my dad Abereka. So like you rightfully say, and for example, ka breaki go from Kobotoka ke Kotabi. ka break ya 45 minutes, but I'll still come back on time. Ha ke ne ke tsena ko boitirelo, maybe that is why ke ratang watch yana. Ka nako le go no sna motlakase. So ne re dirisa bele ka break for the change the period and what's near school or school. So I was the one doing it, and I can't remember any time where I rang the bell late. Yeah, that's how time conscious I am and I've been throughout my life. And as you rightfully say, the funny thing or the family stapel in Edili in Balabansi, and it was actually quite funny that in a forum house, Baba Matarwala Mosit Kamorin, Bambata Shara Kamore, Hylor Set Kamora enough, Bambatara Mo kitchen. So that's how we grew up. And for us it was not funny. It actually taught us life. And when you say to somebody that it's almost like when they actually don't believe it, but and that's why one of my mantras called humble, because I know where I come from. I come from it's a sign for when. And you know the nice thing in those days, how no cool and and that's how we grew up, and would share everything and anything. You know, the only time that we'll eat the nice food, it was on a Sunday. My mother used to cook, she used to bake, so we'll eat a full meal on a Sunday, but during the week we'll eat whatever is prepared, and we never complained. And I think that's what brought us up. And even if we had people coming over Bachaka or Batla unannounced, we'll still share the food lebone. So we grew up in that type of an environment where sharing was always a big thing with us. And that is why today I believe in sharing, because that's how I was brought up. I was brought up knowing that, you know, it's not only about you, it's also about other people that live with you.
So, 9 qualifications. Opasimetric killing, opasimetric young, opasimulaka with degree, ofitleang one doctor, you know, take us through the journey.
So maybe to start off with, Agiloko Primary, I was always a bright student, and when I got to Kobitirelo, I was, you know, kana kwele apele nera how pass off it no I can never the position. I was always number 1, and there was this lady, Mimi Libita. So between Nali Mimi, Nere Chenchisa, and how the number 1 would do like desking your copy, as people but cut classes, so they can see or do Momo Jago, okay, the number 1, and then the following one would be number 2. So Nali Mimi were like that. And one bad thing happened, but it was a lesson as well, is that High School, Usimula Papa no, you know, life it's about you, and you know, you are the thing, you know. And I started slacking a bit. I think I was not focusing quite a lot but I was still passing. But the next passing, the way, you know, it is actually my standard and the way that I'm used to passes. So I completed my matric in 1989, and immediately thereafter, then I was home for about a year, and it was not because I needed a break. You know, in such families, you need to have people who can fund your studies. I firstly wanted to study medicine, and afterwards I realized I might not make it, then I wanted to study law, and I still realized it was expensive for me to study law. A good friend of mine, Richard Mutumi Mukatsa, Uruta Kobotoga, one day we decided, no, Raubata space go teachers college, and that's when we went. And Rakra space go TCE. Then I started to go Pretoria, go Social Nguve, to study my teacher's qualification. And when I completed my teacher's qualification, I was the Duke's student, so I was the top student. And in fact, the funny thing was, I was also in the SRC as the vice president of the SRC. I was running as well, regularly an athlete. My events were 100 meters, 200 meters. I also did a relay. I did high jump. I also played soccer. So I've always had energy. So I'm not even surprised by myself, by the energy that I have. So I was the Duke student, and they offered me to study for free a higher education qualification, but I decided not to. I opted not to, and I decided to not get Lahai, and I started working more Porsche. So my one qualification, I get full time. The rest I did part time. I then went and registered Kopika, my first degree, my BA. Finished it record time, and then I registered my honors, BA in industrial psychology, honors in industrial psychology, And then when I did my fourth degree, which was, or my fourth qualification, which was honors in educational law, I then decided to register a qualification in London, sports. So I was doing two qualifications at the same time. Then there was a time I gave FASA because it was one of those short programs. I think it was a year and a half or so. And then while I was finishing that, I also registered another qualification called Position in institution as well, teaching.
Okay.
So I registered that as well while I was doing another degree. So I was doing two qualifications at the same time. Yeah. So if roster it lasha, then I would then go medical certificate because the cost or the exams are lasha, but it was not always. It was maybe one or two. But I would study all of them and I would then get the passes. So I then completed my BA honors, my honors in educational law, my qualification in sports science, my higher qualification in physical training or sports, COPOC, and then I registered for my masters. And then after I registered for my masters, I then decided, no man, my brains are still enough. So I then registered for my PhD and also finished my PhD in record time. And then that was almost a period of 15 years that I was studying. In fact, earlier when I was saying to somebody, in the 15 years that I was studying for my first 8 qualifications, I was sleeping an average of 3 hours a night. So I would go because I study part-time. So I would go school and then when I knock off at 2, and then I will sit until about 3:30 and sit more couching for. So that's how I learned to do this thing called power nap. So I'll take power nap at 30 minutes, and then I'll take my books, go varsity, attend the class, and then at the class it's 9. I will stay longer. Dr. Mafisa study until 11, 12 busiho. I'll have my dinner at 12 o'clock busiho, and then get rested for a few hours, and then wake up again and study. So for 15 years, I average at 3 hours. So it was never a funny thing or a weird thing. So that's how I completed my studies. And then when I got into this thing, ministry, I needed to have a qualification in theology. So then I registered for qualification in theology. Then I also have a bachelor's degree in theology. So these are my non-qualifications. I've been challenging myself to actually get to 10. Now why 10? 10 is because when I was at varsity, or I make a local college in Dr. Ace, that man had 10 qualifications.
Yo.
And I thought to myself, that's that's inspiration. I mean, that guy inspired me for study the way I studied, and I've been challenging myself, or maybe I must do the 10th one. But because of the things that I'm doing now, it seems it might not happen. But I cannot guarantee or it might not happen. It might happen. So that's how I got to my 10 qualifications.
What I want to see you are a reverend also. So.
Yeah. So
starting this day, spirituality, like how did you know this is the journey that I must follow? I guess sometimes but we need God. We need God to my pilong man
So I grew up in a very spiritual family. I mean, we had this thing on a Sunday you'll go to church. You know, how batsadi ba tla no o ya kerekeng and we itse batsadi kana go nyela pele bana ba re ha ile gore a batloga kerekeng o tla dula kontle o tla remela rona re bo go kerekeng. So that is where now everything actually started. That I was raised in a very religious spiritual family, very religious in approach. And I remember Easter Easter you find hora ke na go le go nwa lalavoka. So mama kana tsama le rona rotlhe ya lalo asna gore bana ba bantsi ba bana no ne re tsama yalo, and then ha o tshwara ke boroko o na la go mo tlase ga bench ya go kerekeng, and then you sleep, and then ha o tsoga ba tsoga gape o tswela pele o joina kereke. So that's how I grew up. My uncles were lay ministers go Anglican church. So that's also that exposure, spirituality. my aunts go Johannesburg, and you might possibly know them by Jerusalem Angel. So they've been in that journey. So we are in fact in that type of a family. I gave it a metric. I was supposed to have studied ministry go America, but that's a story for another day. So it did not happen the way I anticipated. But I thank God for that, because it gave me a different journey of life, which I'm very grateful for. Because from there on, and I started doing other things. This thing, maybe it's not my thing, and that's why I studied mining and so on and so forth. And while I was doing that, I thought, no, man. This thing, maybe I say some, but when it's your thing, it's your thing. It will challenge you. It will come to you. It will, you'll always see. And the one thing that you'll see, that's when God put the, because sometimes people forget that without God there's nothing, and God will always preserve your your space. And when you believe, and when you ask, He will give, and ask with a pure heart. So that's when I then decided, no, hey, this thing in a difficulty. Let me rather go. So negile go wesel, and I went for, there's a thing called wesel, they call screening. Who screen or no, how can namuruti? Again, it's a story for another day. But the funniest thing is that you go through a process. So baku interviewer and so forth, and they ask you questions as to why you want what namuruti. And the funniest thing was that I went to this screening twice. The third time I decided to, I said to my mom, if I come back and these people ask me the same things again, I'm not going to go again. And I'm done. And so one of the things they were asking me about why we're not doctor. And then because you also give them your CV, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So they looked at my CV, but no, but we're not mining. You're a manager, you're working a good job. It must be paying. Why would you want to come more ministering? And remember, ministry is about servanthood. It's not about whether you get money or don't get money. That's really not the purpose. And they kept on saying that. One of them said, no, for us to accept you, then you must leave your job and come full time into ministry. And I said to them, no, I'm not gonna do that. So that day, I came back and I said to my mom, I'm gonna leave. And my mom said, AME. And by the way, I used to go AME even before then. So I negated the AME for almost 10 years, because by then I was dating my current wife, or my wife. And I was dating her so I get against someone to go sell so we're just dating, and that's how it happened. Where I would then go AME. So by the time that I decided to go AME, it was really not a big shift or change, because what happened was that at least I knew at that point in time where Leteja Wesel is the same. So then I did my last, I think, sermon the one day, but I'd already spoken to Muruti and I had written a letter. I made sure all my dues and my obligations are up to date. And outlokala batwabang, ska batlokala go se monate. Tsamaka ka gishwela ska ira metlholo go tla gote o no rasitse or hey no, I left peacefully, and that is why even today I can go back when I get invited or when there's something go. So then I joined AME. And then when I joined AME, then I was welcomed into the AME church, and I went through the whole process here as Rutisa AME, and that's how I became Muruti go AME.
Wow. So kita lagi bona na kungwe uku ka Dubai, ku London, ku kay. Uso ko nakita kay so far.
I don't know. I lost count where I've been. Because I was involved more cricket than for years. I used to go overseas almost twice or thrice a year at some stage, but it became too much. And then I decided I'm not going to do that anymore. So I've traveled. I lost count, but the only thing that I can tell you, I can go overseas and do whatever, but I'll still come back to this country. I love South Africa. And people who have never been overseas, they actually have this thing overseas is this green grass, nice on the other side, but you'll miss a lot of South Africa. The first thing that hits you when you travel like that is the food that you eat. Dijo tsa hotel all the time, they are always not nice. Di monate how start from there on, not really. And then the other thing as well is that your surroundings, you know, because how you can live now and say, speed, you know, I have friends, I can call this person, but when you are overseas, you know, you are confined to this particular space and surrounding. And that is why I always say, the thought you're overseas is always nice. The thought of being in a plane is nice, but I can tell you, you'll always come back to this country. It's a wonderful country, despite its issues. Every country has its own issues, by the way.
You had your best
I
enjoyed this country, and maybe I'll come back again with my kids and wife one day.
So there's two that I think I enjoyed the most. I enjoyed London. I enjoyed England because I can go to England. I had the privilege to go to London and go through a number of places that are significant in history. And by the way, London a big circle, or big intersection. They call it Piccadilly Circus. So on a Saturday, it's an entertainment area also of sorts. It's one almost like, let's say, Devil's Corner type of a thing. But it's entertaining, kitty restaurants, kitty pubs, and whatever else. So there's about, at any given time on a weekend, 5,000 people. So it's exciting, super nice, and whatever. So it was one of those things that I saw, which was quite unique to me. I also enjoyed, while I was in England, I also enjoyed Manchester. In fact, I got to go I got invited one of the agents to Manchester United when we were there, and I sat in the players' box in that year. So it was actually quite nice, and the view was wonderful. But the funniest thing is that I enjoyed also Hong Kong.
Wow. Okay.
So Hong Kong, the other side of Hong Kong, when you go under the ocean, sighting by Bisa Huang Shai. So Huang Shai, Leone, in a nice entertaining places. That's where you get all the restaurants and whatever. So it's quite nice.
Did you enjoy food court Hong Kong?
Yes, but I ate mostly only veggies.
Okay.
Next trust but those are the places that I enjoyed.
Yeah. Okay. What like what about Dr Oupa, Dr Spider?
So
how okay, most 7 days, ne? Most 7 days with them.
Most 7 days in Gaberek.
What do you do?
Every day.
What do you do?
You know, I just said to somebody, I really call functioning earlier on. I said to them, so 7 days, it's quite simple. On a Monday, I wake up at 4 to prepare for the week. And then I travel to Joburg because I'm employed go Joburg. And then I work for 5 days go Joburg. Mining, yes.
Okay.
I work in a mining.
Mining.
Let me just give you the schedule first. So I work for 5 days go mining. But remember, in between, there are other things that I do. As well I go mining, I chase, I do live like TV. And then in between, I have the boards that I share. So I would have board meetings away from my job. I also have interaction so that they can do certain things. So I'll have meetings either in the afternoons or I'll have in the early evenings. So sometimes my evenings are up until late, where I interact with people online, so that or virtually. We have virtual meetings for them to do work. Even now, the activity that I went to is one of the boards that I share. So we're opening a facility. And then on a Friday, I come home, and then I try to squeeze as many things as I can. And now that I have a new venture that I started, on a Friday, I go to the office here, my new business, and then give a assist what they need. On a Saturday, if kisna finra lor lenyalo ko kerekeng ke lengo gone, then I do my other activity, the other business. So I wake up on Saturday at 5 o'clock. prepare for that, do that work for the whole, for better part of the day. Let's say until 11ish, 12ish, and then I'm done. Then I try to rest. And then Sunday I wake up again in the morning, ka 6 or 5:30, and then ka 7 I drive ko Joburg ke we ko kerekeng ke le moruti go gone ko Vilakazi go Babitsa FH Gao. So ke go teng, and then I come back around 2, and then I'll have my lunch, and then I take my nap, ke motole nap, so that Monday I can be fresh for the week that's starting. So that is that. And so when you say Gabereka, you need to qualify it for Gabereka. What do I do? Because Gabereka all the time.
No,
but
I'm employed.
So I'm employed. I joined the mining industry in 2003. I first started working for a mine called Impala, Korastenbeke. So I stayed Korastenbeke for 10 years. And then in that time, I worked for Impala for about 6 years. And in the 6 years, I got promoted 4 times. So almost every 8 months, I was getting promotion, because maybe Bargebereka too much, I don't know. But because I'm a hard worker, and when I left Impala, I was in the top 10 performers, so the whole of Impala. And so they also did not want me to leave, but I then left Impala after 6.5 years, joined Anglo American, or then it was called Anglo Platinum. I was then also a manager Koteng. I was the Nickel area training for the whole of Rustenburg. And then I spent about 4 years. So before I left Impala to go to Anglo Platinum, I got recruited by them. So all of the mining roles that I've been, I was headhunted by those mines. So they headhunted me, and then I joined the Anglo. And then while I was at Anglo, Kinale 4 years, I was headhunted by Anglo Gold Ashanti. Then I came this side because Anglo Gold Ashanti Kaltenville Okni, so I joined them. And then while I was there, I think into my 5th year or something like that. I got headhunted by South 32. That's where I am now. I've been with South 32, which is an Australian mining company. We do what we call base metals, aluminium, copper, those type of minerals. So I've been with South 32 for almost 9 years, going to my 10th year. But unfortunately, I got headhunted by another mine, which I'm not going to disclose. So I got a position as vice president. So I'll be joining them as soon as I'm ready to start work again after I leave my current employer. No, I'm not like that. But the only thing that I can say is that I'm happy that throughout my career I've been in the top 10.
Yeah.
At Impala I was in the top 10. Anglo Platinum was in the top 10. Anglo Gold Ashanti was in the top 10 performers. Even in South 32, I'm in the top 10. In fact, when I was about to leave South 32 about 4 years ago, they recruited against Saswal. And they wanted to retain me, and I said to them, okay, how about retain? Are you willing to give me more money? And I was just joking, by the way. And they said, no, you are already in the whole company throughout the world, in your band, more level in I'm in the top 5. So it became very difficult for them to give me an adjustment, but they gave me another incentive, which I'm not going to talk about, but they gave me another incentive. So for now, I'm moving. I don't want them to counter offer. I'm happy where I am.
Dr. Oupa, an issue it's very critical in society. Kanya mental health. And young people because especially Mauti kana Magenti kana Abuti, they don't talk habanale matata. Kore ke batla go bitsa ena mo goreng wena le ka mokgo go tseng ka teng you manage gore we push wena gore life is hard but I need to get where I want to be. So khona musha o shebile in this podcast as we speak now. What can we say about issue of mental health in our society?
Look, I think we grew up in different times, and let us accept that. And when I say in different times, in those days when I was growing up, nosna TikTok or nosna Instagram or nosna Facebook or nosna WhatsApp and so on. It was simple. How much phone that type of an arrangement. But these days we grow up in a lot of pressure coming from different angles, and some of these angles certainly they are very salient in a sense that somebody looks at somebody else and they say, I see this guy called influencer. And by the way, I always say to people, what is an influencer? There's no career called influencer. Somebody must go to school, or somebody must get a career, somebody must learn, somebody must educate themselves to be something. Not an influencer. An influencer is somebody who's taking the aparo, kata photo, more Instagramming or whatever. In fact, I spoke to a number of people on this subject, and I realized that some of the people, whatever they are posting, is not even theirs. They borrow other clothes, or they go and they use background dwelling, or it's not theirs. They go to a restaurant, buy the picture or video. They go to a house which is not theirs. They buy more and so on. So that by itself actually creates pressure to a mobile tone. And what people then do is that they start not to understand how to deal with societal pressure and or peer group pressure, because what they actually are seeing, they're seeing their peers progress, and what then happens is that because they come from a humble background, and mama le papa can't afford the they create that element pressure. The other thing, it's also said, if you think about it, when you have people like, especially like you were saying, Majita and so on, there's this thing in our Majita is strong, you can't cry and what. I don't think it's actually correct. If there's something you must deal with it. And if it's something you sort of make room for you to speak to somebody about it. And I always say, when you have friends, you can have 10, 15 friends, doesn't matter, but you need to have that one person that you can confide to and share some things they are difficult, and you are dealing with one. But the fact that we always want to show up, always smiling, and even when we are hurting, we always want to show up in an environment and pretend that we are all this and that. It's also not helpful. Unfortunately, the cracks in your life, when you fill them with polyfiller, nobody will see that you have cracks. I always say, when you look at ladies, they might be hurt and bruised and battered inside, but they put on makeup, they put on nice shoes, they wear nice clothes, and they walk on the street, and you look at them and you're thinking, they're not hurting. And that's what we do. We have this mask that we always put on. And I remind people when those things happen, they must remind you what Aretha Franklin was saying. She always in the song she says, the moment you wake up, before you put on your makeup, say a little prayer. Before you choose which dress to wear now, say a little prayer. So sometimes when things are tough, you must pray, and when things are difficult, pray. But you must also learn to speak about these things. But maybe one other thing is that people forget when you are in a group you tend to forget your problems. But when you switch off the lights, it's almost like you get a flash. This thing, this whole thing hitting you again, and say, but there's this thing in trouble. I think that's where we need to start talking about it. Ladies have it much easier in that nice ladies nice ladies when something you show your emotion. And I think it's time that Ronas as Bontate or Van Norbashiman, we must also show our emotion.
We should also invite God who will bring data to
Absolutely.
Because key foundation.
Absolutely.
Then no one is going to fail at the end. Because out of
and a lot of people that's how judge you but mototla is something about waiting somebody else who judge. And I think before you judge somebody else, you must always look at yourself first. Because it's easier for you to start throwing stones when you yourself live in a glass house. And these are the problems and challenges that we have, Rona, as human beings. We must always remember we are not born fragile. We are born to be fragile. We are born with emotions. And that is why sometimes when you are happy, you smile and you laugh. When you are sad, you cry and you almost break down. And that is just what life is all about. And I think that for me, it's very, very important. But also what I also see quite a lot of is that we must also learn to absorb pressure. Once you are not able, also not this ability, you are not able to know what you can and can't do, then it becomes a problem, because you must also know your limitations. If you have limitations, then you must understand it in that way. I can tell you, when I was growing up, I grew up in a household where I knew I can't get a lot of what I wanted. I mean, when my friends were wearing different clothes, the hairstyle, I could not afford that. You know, my mother used to have a situation where every time ka December, first Sunday, my siblings, mama ko na go tropongo sales house, our regular the school, and she always reminded us for la bona gore la regular school, ba le ba para di apartsa first Sunday, ba go di apara only ka the first Sunday, but Lona, you'll be beautiful and neat and heidi go school every single day, because le hempe cleaning, la barucha cleaning, you have new shoes and whatever else, and it made sense. Rather put energy and effort in something has lots in your pressure, because some of the things that we do, we actually do them for a moment. We don't do them for a longer period of time, because it's only then where you wear something and then afterwards, what does it mean? It means nothing, because you still feel empty inside. It's not like it's feeling you at all. You're just competing with your peers. You want to be seen in the public spaces, this, that or the other. And maybe as I finish off this comment as well, is that I think ladies must also be careful. Sometimes what they do is that they want to live life and they reflect the so they look at their friends this hairstyle or really or appearing or whatever, and then they envy them. And sometimes you must also remember, you want to be known for what you are, and not known because when now you are or data this person, that person, whatever else. If you data this person, mama, and then you cut the photo or whatever, remember, you don't own that car. You own the picture. That's the only thing that you have. There's a photo and nothing else. So for me, it's just people must take charge of their lives, and they must have their own garden that they water, not garden motomo.
Your take more states on politics in South Africa, especially related G20, no GNU. Is it working? How is it?
Look, it's quite interesting, because look, the type of work that I do political analysis for the company. I also look after the stakeholders for the company, so we engage with various stakeholders on various topics, and I'm making sure that we're also compliant on a number of things. And you know, when after the elections, the guys in Australia, where the CEO was asking me, so what do you think state is the politics in South Africa, and do you think this thing will work? And I said to him, every situation dictates a particular set of actions. And when I say this, I'm saying it from the point of view, when the ANC then was strong and they were winning everything, I'm sure at that point in time we needed strong opposition and whatever else, so that we can neutralize and have a almost like a stable and almost watchdogs, watching over the government run by the ANC. But when the ANC did not make the cut for them to be outright winners, it dictated that there was a different set of action that needed to take place. And what was that action? The action was that they had to look around and say, how can we make sure that we form a government? And what type of partners do you want to have in government? And remember, even though that ANC had a particular threshold, they are actually not the commanders of the GNU, even though that it's perceived like that. They need certain votes for them to be able to really sort of take charge and control of that. So if other people can pull their votes, then it becomes problematic. The state of politics in the country, I think we needed something like that for a change. We needed something like that that actually reminds us, where we come from. People who have been in the ANC and who really started the movement, they knew how it was to be in the trenches. They knew how it was to stay in a camp in a different country and not see your family, your aunts, your uncles, and whoever else, They knew how difficult it was for them to be in an environment where their movements are controlled. And that is why you see today that the four bearers, the ANC, the minute that they shifted, the new ones that came in, they don't know the pain, what people went through. And I'm apolitical, so I always say to people I can talk about any political party. It really doesn't pain me at all. But the problem is that if you don't know thirst, you won't appreciate water. And if you don't know hunger, you won't appreciate food. So these people who are now in these positions, for all the various political parties, I was just picking on the ANC, they don't know the pain of going through all this. And that is why today they can mess up and they can go into a role and then they think that they control the world. They can go into a role, finance, and then they can squander the money. They can go into a role of being a director or a president or a whatever, and then they actually just mess up. Now, you'll start to see that the erosion of let's call it the black vote, it will start to erode, because now all of a sudden you now have an MK which came from nowhere, took votes. You now have an EFF which is trying to make a comeback, and they're trying to get votes or their votes, let's call it votes back. ANC is also trying the same thing. And now you also have Florence Chivambo coming up with this weird idea that I'm not even sure where it's coming from and where it will land. The problem that these people forget is that they are fishing from the same pond. So they are all vying for the same people that everybody else is vying for. The DA wants a black vote. ANC wants they want their vote back. EFF thinks that we are always number 2 or number 3 in different regions or provinces or even national or whatever. MK wants to maintain their strength. Now Floyd is coming through, and then all these other smaller pieces, your ATMs, your boss and whatever else. So everybody else is fishing in the same pond, and that is why you'll see, and maybe my prediction will be wrong, but I stand by this prediction. That is why you will see that the white people will continue to forge a strength amongst themselves, in that they will have your DA and your Freedom Front Plus and whatever else. And if you look at the white parties, there's only a handful. There's possibly three or 4 of them. But mostly with the black parties, there are multitudes. And these multitudes, they want the same people to vote for them. So for me, it's actually, we need to get to a point where sanity prevails. And sanity should prevail where we actually start asking ourselves, where did we actually go wrong? Because if you think about it, 1994, we were so happy and excited that, we now have a black government. But the question is, where did we go wrong? And for me, and I'm not saying this because Nkagisang is cool, but sometimes when you put people who don't know much in a space and you expect them to do miracles, they can't even explain to you what a strategy is. They can't explain to you how they put together what a budget and explain a budget. They can't come to you and say, Rona, we have this whole vision planned out and worked out and whatever else that we want to take a society forward. And that for me it's really, really painful. But also, maybe as I close this part, is that when you look at, let me use an example of locally. When you look at our politics locally, I was hoping that, even if some of us are not active in politics, and some people, because if you look at Posh, I can give you names of people who come from Posh, who I think they can actually make a meaningful contribution in Posh. And that's where our politicians must actually go back and say, can we have a forum, of people who can create an intellectual capacity and rebuild Poch. And some of the people, and I'm sure including myself, they are not there because they want to be in politics. I don't want to be a mayor. I don't want to be a councillor. I don't want to be this or that. But I love Poch. If I did not love Poch, I would not have stayed in Rustenburg for 10 years and yet build a house in Poch. Worked in Joburg for 10 years and yet still have a house in Poch. And every weekend I'm coming to Poch. It tells you that I love Poch. And it tells you that I have Poch at heart and I don't want to see Poch fail. Just now I was in Lichtenberg. There's no street without a pothole in Lichtenberg. One guy was showing me direction. He told me I must not use the one street because it's gravel. Oh. But I went into another street and everything was gravel. It's like there's no, you struggle to find a piece of a third route. And that for me was really almost that rude awakening that black men, you need to wake up.
What's a phobia?
Fear of failure.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe in success. I believe in saying I should never let my fears dictate my success. And that is why for me it's always that whenever I do something, I always put a positive energy to it that I will succeed. And that is why when I conceptualized my latest venture, I set for 3 years researching that business. And I took 8 months preparing everything that when I start, I must start. So that is almost like when you know that you don't want to fail, planning becomes key. And when you don't want to fail, preparation becomes key.
Anxiety, depression, what can you say?
Look, I think they must learn to identify what their challenges are. Because sometimes when we say depressed, you must know what the symptoms of your depression is. Don't be depressed because mama no regular sneakers and Nike. That's not depression. Look at what your root cause are. And if you are depressed and you feel that you are down, that is why we have people like us in the society that are able to speak to anybody. In fact, I must also tell you, renale group ya eri butseng ya mathaka ke majita fela go thabeng both ba re golelang go thabeng. So what we do every year, we bring all the guys together from all ages. And what the reason why we did that, we never rata go ntsha bana ba ba golang go rona re gotse mo tlase ga bomang and re gotse magorot mana rona ba re ruta eng. And that is why when we sit with them, we always show them no e ke gorot mana rona and what. So it is that cohesion, because we cannot isolate people simply because they feel isolated. We must try bring everybody together, and we must stop this thing in our people want to speak to certain people. We must have that camaraderie. We must have that space. So when I don't know how many people I speak to in a day. And it doesn't trouble me at all. I actually love it because I can interact with people. I love being around people. I love understanding where questions that you're asking. What makes you tick? What do you think about life? Because people want to engage, and people look at you and they say, maybe there's a formula that I could apply that this person applied. But there's one thing, and that's my mantra. I always say to people, you must remember, humility attracts and arrogance repels. If you are humble, you'll attract people. If you are arrogant, you will push people away.
Reverend,
Our God, Father, to our Lord Jesus Christ, as we come before your throne of mercy, we are always grateful that you are in our lives. And as you shine your light on our feet, let us be reminded of everybody who today would be listening to us, and remind them that you are the only God that we must pray to. And remind us always, God, that whenever we find difficulties, you should be before us. A rapela modimo a rona, re a itse gore ka nako tsotlhe o na le rona mo matshelong a rona. Re a itse gore ka nako tsotlhe ha o tsamaya le rona modimo, lesedi le a bonagala le bophelo bo tla siama. Mme re tla mo go wena modimo, wena le ba le bopa moya, gore ka nako tsotlhe a re imetswe e nne wena o tla re imollang. Ha re tsamaya le wena modimo wa rona, o nne mmogo le rona ka nako tsotlhe. E re ga lesedi e ka re le tla tloga mo go rona modimo, e nne wena o tla re gakololang gore botshelo bo tla tswelela pele. Re natlafatse ka metlha yotlhe, o nne le rona jalo le ka metlha, gore a re gakolola leina la gago le bana ba gago modimo wa rona ba opele dikoma tsa thapelo tse di dumelang gore ke wena modimo wa rona. Ka nako tsotlhe o nne le rona re gakololle gore ke wena yo tla reng ga o setse go fetile modimo go tla sala wena mo matshelong a rona. Nna le rona ka nako tsotlhe ka Kriste morena wa rona re a leboga. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for your time, Doctor. I hope hore motho tla bonang the podcast o tla fetola ka mokgwa a naganang ka teng. And thank you so much also go tsa nako ya gago. Re itse gore you are very, very busy. Thank you go tsa nako ya gago go tla go teacha bašwa gore tshwanetse ba etseng in order to succeed in life, and le gore ba itse gore modimo teng ene ke ba mo be ko pele ka dinako tsotlhe. In Ili Dr. Oupa Nkagisang on our episode today. We thank you so much. When I was we thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time. If you are now you like me to profile, follow on my socials, Makale Marumo get me ko Facebook, okay, motoki mama mu community, garata hore atlhagile mo podcasting because o ka fetola maphelo a basha yana kana the stories a ga se ka fetola maphelo a basha ka tsela e yana. Ra leboga till we meet again. Ciao.